Hello everybody, welcome back to the Spoked Wheel YouTube channel. Today is a special day because we have our very first episode of the Pro Cyclist Mode series that we're going to be doing on Pro Cycling Manager 2021. As you can see by the screen, we will be playing as Taylor Phinney, American rider, was known for being a strong time trialist. One person actually guessed who we would be playing as for this series on the PCM 21 time trial gameplay video I did, so shout out to Darren Smith for guessing Taylor Phinney correctly. Taylor Phinney is indeed the rider that we're going to be playing with. He was one of my favorite riders when he rode. He was very, very talented. We'll get into the reasons why I picked him and what we're going to be looking to do a little bit later on, but just for this screen, you can see we have his name in there. We're from the United States of America. I've taken the height and weight information from his Pro Cycling Stats page, and then we also have a little picture of Taylor Phinney there as well to complete the look. So on the second page for creating our version of Taylor Phinney, we have the main axis, secondary axis, and potential. Our main axis, not a surprise, is going to be time trial. Phinney was really good at time trials. That was sort of his speciality on the road. He was also very good in the individual pursuit on the track, so those skills translate well. For our secondary axis, we're going to put Northern Classics in there. He had some decent results on the cobbles and in Northern Classics races throughout his career as well, and when he wanted to, he also had a decent sprint on him, so we'll get a little bit of that from that secondary axis Northern Classics. And then in terms of potential, we're going to put it as world class. I think Taylor Phinney, the sort of path that his career was on in the early part of his career, is definitely deserving of world class potential. Specifically, if you look at his 2012 season, he finished second in the ITT World Championships. He also finished fourth in the Olympic Games in the road race and the time trial. So those are incredible results for a rider who was only 22 or 23 at the time. In 2014, he suffered a very serious leg injury. He broke his tibia and ruptured a tendon as well, I think, in the U.S. National Road Championships. So from that point on, his career was a little bit different, but I think if he had not suffered that serious injury in that race, he would have continued really elevating his level and would have been one of the best time trialists in the world throughout his career. So that's why we're putting him on world class. And sort of our goals for this series are going to be centered around time trials, which is pretty different from what we did in PCM 20 with Andy Schleck trying to win Grand Tours. We definitely won't be doing that with Taylor Phinney. Our ultimate goal, I think, is going to try to become the time trial world champion. We'll hopefully pick up a few national time trial championships as well along the way. I think in his career, Phinney won 3 of those, so we'll definitely try and do that. And then maybe another goal can be something like Paris-Roubaix, for example. Even though Phinney suffered that serious injury in 2014, he bounced back pretty nicely, and one of his best results after that point was an 8th place in Paris-Roubaix in 2018, so that's another race that we can try and target with Taylor Phinney. So the secondary access of Northern Classics helps out with that goal as well. Alright, so now we've advanced to our choice of team to start with. As you can see, we have a continental American team, Elevate Weboplex Pro Cycling. We also have a Portuguese continental team, FAPEL, who we happened to ride for with Andy Schleck in our last career. And then our third option is Continental Pro American team, Rally Cycling. I think we're going to go ahead and pick Rally Cycling. It's a team that sort of, I think Taylor Phinney fits the vibe of. He seemed to be a really relaxed and nice guy on the bike and off the bike as well. And I think sort of the way that Rally Cycling goes about things fits with the personality Taylor Phinney had in his career. So we're going to make that choice. We're going to start in the Continental Pro ranks here, which should give us access to some interesting races in our first season. So yeah, we're going to go ahead and pick Rally Cycling and then get into the career itself. Alright, so now that we've set up our version of Taylor Phinney, we've gone into career mode and set up our calendar and training schedule as well. It's a little bit different in Pro Cycling Manager 2021. I haven't played it a ton yet, so I'm still kind of learning as we go, but I think we've set things up correctly for this first season. But actually, before we take a look at that, we're going to head over to our team and just take a look at what riders we'll be riding with in this first season with Taylor Phinney. So part of why I picked rally cycling is that there are a lot of riders on this team that I actually like a lot. So Joey Rosskopf, Ben King, Robin Carpenter, and Magnus Sheffield are all riders that I'm a fan of in real life, so it's going to be fun to get a chance to ride with those guys in the game. I'm anticipating probably staying with Rally for the first 2 seasons with Taylor Phinney before we try and make a jump to the World Tour. So we should get nice and familiar with these guys as teammates, and given our rider build, I think there's going to be a lot of races where if we're not going for the time trial on just a normal road stage, we'll be working as a teammate for some of these guys. So hopefully we can set them up for some wins and do our job nicely as a domestique when that chance arises. Now let's take a look at the races we have on the calendar for our first season with Taylor Phinney. Because we picked a Pro Continental team, there are a lot of races that we're not quite yet eligible to ride in because of our level. It's still at level 1, we're at the start of the career, so that makes our choices a little bit easier in terms of what races we can actually do. We're going to start with the Tour of Anatolia in Turkey. Not really any stages in this one that are going to suit us, so it's just going to be about gaining XP and improving ourselves as a rider. Next up is the Tour of Rwanda, which is an awesome race. I'm excited to do that with Taylor Phinney. Again, there's not really any stages that suit us too much. Maybe these last 2 with the cobblestones we'll be able to get a decent result in there, but no time trials or anything like that. And we wrap up the first portion of our season with a 1-day race in France. So we don't really get into any time trials in the first part of our season, but we definitely do in the second. The Joe Martin stage race starts with a prologue. It's a mountainous one, so not exactly right up our alley, but that will be our first chance at riding a time trial with Phinney. We'll then go to the Tour of the Gila, which this is really the first stage of our career, I think, that we'll have a real decent shot at targeting. 24-kilometer long time trial should play nicely to our strengths, so that's one of our objectives on the season because we're hoping to get a nice result there. We also have the Winston-Salem Cycling Classic in this portion of our season. And then it's time for the National Championships. Before we get there, the Ronde van Zeeland in the Netherlands is on the calendar. That's a race with lots of cobblestones, so we might be able to do okay there. The USA ITT is one of our big goals for the season. I think our ratings probably won't be high enough by this point to contend for the win, but we can try our best to get a decent result there. And then we have the road race as well. The Christian Armstrong time trial race here is another one of our big goals for the season. 22-kilometer long time trial should be another one that suits Taylor Phinney very well. And then into the last portion of our season, we currently have this French stage race with a 22-kilometer time trial in there. Should be another good chance for us. And we also have the Crow race on the calendar right now. One race that I would like to add to our calendar is the Tour of Utah, because there's a 34-kilometer long time trial in there. It's one of the biggest races in the USA, so if we can level up to level 6 by this point in the season, we will definitely look to add that race to the calendar so we can try and win that time trial. And now, looking ahead to our objectives page for the season, if you watch our Andy Schleck series, Pro Cycling Manager 2020, you can see that this looks a lot different. In PCM 20, you could pick 3 races throughout the season to be your objectives. You can have a lot more in PCM 2021. Like I said earlier, I'm still not super familiar with this system. It's a pretty big change in terms of preparing your fitness for the rider, because that sort of, I don't want to call it a cheat, but the strategy of just doing hard break training in order to stay up in the 90s all season is not a thing anymore. It's a little bit different this year. Probably a little bit more realistic, to be fair. It would be pretty tough to ask a rider to be at that good fitness for a whole season in real life, so they've made a change to make it a little bit more realistic. And as you can see from the objectives we have, it's a lot of American races. I tried to put every single race, I think, with a time trial that we're doing this year into our objectives so that we're on good form for all of those. You can see the Tour of the Gila, the ITT National Championships, Tour of Utah, as well as that French stage race with the time trial in it. So we're looking to peak for our opportunities in the time trial in order to maximize our chances at having success. So now we're going to start with the racing for Taylor Phinney's career. For this video, I think we're just going to play this first flat stage of the Tour of Antalya, just to get some XP, get our first stage into the legs. One positive, I think, of playing with this rider build is that there's going to be a lot of stages, such as this one, where we're just not going to play a role, really. So there will be a lot of stages where we can just go through quickly without recording, which means I think we'll be able to make really good progress in this series and develop a lot as a rider, which I'm looking forward to for sure. So we'll definitely play every single time trial that we do. We'll probably try and play some flat stages where we're able to be a useful teammate as well, but I think there will be a lot of stages that we can just go through quickly, and as a result, we'll be able to make good progress, I think, in this career. Alright, so we're into our first ever race with Taylor Phinney, and our team wants us to try and get into the breakaway and play the role of Barrador today. So that's what we're going to try and do. We're going to follow this attack here and save our energy a little bit. As you can see, straight away, Taylor Phinney's a big guy, one of the bigger riders in the peloton probably, so makes sense given how powerful he is and his rider style, good at time trials and Northern Classics and things like that. So we're just going to keep attacking here and hopefully try and get into the breakaway. It looks like Beppu and Hollenstein are also trying to go with us, two World Tour riders there from EF and Israel Startup Nation. But yeah, let's try and make sure that this gap stays away here. Peloton's chasing fairly hard right now, which is unfortunate. So it looks like we're going to have to keep on attacking to try and get away, but we're going to keep doing that, and hopefully we will successfully make it into the breakaway. Alright, we have a gap of over a minute and 20 now, and it's rising quickly, so I think it's safe to say we've made it into the break with Hollenstein and Beppu. It looks like another move is trying to come across the gap here, but I think this is going to be the day's breakaway, this group of three. So our job, I guess, is just going to be to try and hang on with these two World Tour riders for as long as possible on this climb, because that's not really our strong suit, but we'll do our best to try and stick with them and hopefully stay in the break long enough to make our team happy. So we've made it up over the top of the Category 1 climb, in touch with the other two breakaway guys. We couldn't quite go with them when they attacked for the KOM points, but we should be able to bridge back across here because they're slowing down. So that's good news. The rest of the terrain is mostly flat and then downhill, so we should be able to stick with these guys through that for sure. And given that we have a gap of over 6.5 minutes right now, things are looking pretty good for the breakaway at the moment. For some reason, we're not quite catching back up, so let's just close that gap there. Perfect. We're back in the breakaway now, and we're just going to keep riding with these guys and try and hang on as long as we can. With just about 50 kilometers to go, the gap is starting to come down a lot more quickly now. The peloton is inside of 2.5 minutes back of us, so probably going to get caught, but I think we have enough of an advantage to stay out in front to the top of this climb and then a decent portion of the descent as well. So we just want to be careful not to get dropped over the top of this climb to make sure we get as many kilometers as possible in the breakaway, and then we'll just try and hold our advantage on the descent, I guess. We're into the last 20 kilometers with a gap of around a minute, but we're basically out of energy with Taylor Phinney, so we're really just trying to hang on at this point. We've got a bit of a descent coming up, which might help replenish a bit of energy, but I don't think we're going to be able to survive on this flat run into the line because the peloton is coming pretty close to catching us at this point. Well, we battled really hard in the breakaway, but we're going to get dropped by Hollenstein right here, and we're completely out of energy, so the peloton's going to pick us up as well just before we hit 5 kilometers to go. So it was a great day out in the break by Phinney. We didn't quite make it, but now we're just going to sit up and ride it into the finish. In the end, we're going to cross the line here in 69th place with Taylor Phinney. We didn't quite make it in that breakaway, but I think it was an excellent day in terms of getting XP and hopefully making the team happy so that we can level up before the end of this video. So we did indeed do enough to level up, so we get to pick which attributes we want to level up here. I think we're probably going to go with time trial, although it looks like a couple other options here give us sort of a similar thing. Maybe we'll go with Northern Classics here. Is there any difference in the stamina and resistance between the two? No, there's not. So let's go with Northern Classics. We'll get a little boost to our acceleration and downhill, cobblestones, prologue, time trial, flat, and our secondary stats as well. And for our skill, we're going to start off with attentiveness so we can get more XP every time we reach a new month. So that's going to be it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed this first episode of our Pro Cyclist Mode with Taylor Phinney. I'm really excited for this series. Taylor Phinney is basically the exact opposite type of rider from Andy Schleck, so it's going to be fun to try something a little different in Pro Cycling Manager. Also, given that there's a whole new time trial system in this game, I think it's going to be interesting to have an opportunity to play lots of time trials and hopefully get more familiar with it. Because right now, to be honest with you, I don't really understand it. So hopefully as we progress in this career and get opportunities to try and play and win time trials, we'll figure out the key to success. And just to reiterate the goals that we're kind of setting for ourselves at the start of this series, love to eventually win the World Time Trial Championships. Paris-Roubaix would be a nice race to contend in. We definitely want to win some national time trial championships for sure. And perhaps also we'll try and target any Grand Tours that have time trials early on in the first week to maybe potentially take over the race lead and wear a yellow jersey or a Maglia Rosa at some point in the career. That would be pretty exciting too. But I'm very excited for this. It's very cool to be playing as Taylor Phinney. I hope that you have enjoyed it, and I will see you next time.